Hi, I'm Professor Monroe from the St. Petersburg College Applied Ethics Department, and today I'm going to give you an overview to Immanuel Kant's Deontology. Immanuel Kant is an ethical thinker whose importance is difficult to overstate. He comes up with a number of novel moral concepts that thinkers prior to him or around his time had failed to notice. He's a giant of the Western intellectual tradition. That's probably no more true than in ethics. I'm not going to give you a full blow-by-blow of his bio or anything like that. There are lots of good biographies out there, but it really is difficult to overstate Kant's brilliance and importance in the field of ethics. The first thing to note is that Kant believes that ethics is all about doing your moral duty. Now, this sounds simple, but it's importantly different from Aristotle and the view that ethics is fundamentally about developing your character, and it's very different from the utilitarian conception of morality, where what we ought to do is a kind of cost-benefit analysis. So it's an almost economic transaction, the way that Kant understands it. But no, Kant thinks that ethics is about acting in conformity to what he calls the moral law, and doing so from a sense of duty. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that ethics is not about our character. The only real meaning of character, as far as Kant is concerned, is acting on principle. Right, so what does it mean to act on principle? Well, first of all, we have to understand the nature of principles. Principles in Kant's sense, or the moral law, are a sort of timeless, universal ethical command, a thou shalt or a thou shalt not, that's binding on all of us. No matter what our circumstances are, no matter our goals and desires, no matter what our hopes and fears, morality applies to all of us the same way and applies universally across the board. To those very general moral duties, Kant says, moral laws, we have an obligation to observe, regardless of the time or circumstance, regardless of whatever personal exceptions we might write ourselves. Ethics is about understanding our exceptionless obligation to follow the dictates of the moral law. Now, we'll unpack that in subsequent videos because I know that was a mouthful and a bit jargony. That's a difficult aspect of Kant's philosophy, but think of it this way. What we really ought to do, says Kant, is follow our kind of moral orders. Right? And the moral orders are there, and it's just our job to live up to them. And sometimes being a moral person is difficult or challenging, and it may fly in the face of what we want to do, what we hope for, and it may have nothing to do with our typical character. So in this way, Kant's really focused on the musts of ethics, rather than having ethics be consisted of suggestions or sort of cost-benefit analyses. In these videos, we'll look at some key concepts in Kant's theory, including the relationship of reason to ethics, which is importantly different from some of the other theories, the notion of autonomy, the concept of what it means to have goodwill, and then two really important principles in Kant's theory that he calls the categorical imperatives. And we'll talk about the categorical imperatives of universality and respect for persons. And then lastly, our final video will be how to apply Kant's theory to an everyday moral problem. In our next video, we'll focus on reason and autonomy in Kant's theory, and I look forward to talking with you then.